PewDiePie is still the biggest individual creator on YouTube, but probably not for long. Over his time online, he's created thousands of videos and has been a part of the creation of 5 different games. I already gave a full review on his first 3 games, and now I'm going to finish the series by covering the last 2. Let's go in chronological order and talk about his first game, Animal Super Squad, aka ass. This game started development with PewDiePie's now defunct network Revel Mode. Luckily, he was still able to continue work on the game after Revel Mode fell apart. However, PewDiePie was just the producer and had some creative influence. This game was made with the help of Armin I'm not gonna try to pronounce that name. He's also one of the creators of Goat Simulator and the co-founder of Double Moose, which was the development team behind Ass. So what is the game like, you ask? Well, it's a physics-based Happy Wheels. It's Happy Wheels with a chicken. Okay, so that's a very mean way to describe it, but I think you guys understand the core of the game now. Felix even mentions that it's inspired by Happy Wheels along with Trials. I will say Ass definitely has its own identity, feel, and mechanics. This game easily stands out on its own. There's an adventure mode filled with pre-made levels that you can beat in around 5 hours or so. It's a good time that can also give you the occasional challenge. It's nothing crazy, there are a few glitches and I didn't love every single level, but for how short it was, I didn't find myself complaining too much. But the main draw of the game are the fan-made levels. I'm not really into level editing games myself, but as far as I can tell, this is well made and has a fair amount of customizable options, which makes it a shame that the community servers have since been shut down. Looking at the most popular reviews, it seems like this game never left PewDiePie's fanbase. Everyone's just dropping PewDiePie references and not even talking about the game. Most of these people don't even have many hours into the game itself. So what went wrong? I've never played Trials myself, but comparing it to Happy Wheels, it's certainly different enough for people to enjoy. I just think this genre of game wasn't popular on YouTube in 2017. In fact, I think YouTube was absolutely oversaturated with Happy Wheels. By 2014, I'm sure every creator and viewer was completely burnt out of it. I know I was. So for a YouTuber specifically to market this game probably didn't make the most amount of sense. And personally, I didn't see marketing for it anywhere else. Not saying it wasn't there, but I just didn't see it. Even if this game is better than Happy Wheels on a technical level, to many audiences, this game probably feels too similar. And at this point, since the game doesn't even have PewDiePie's name slapped onto it, I think most people forgot of its existence. I've been consistently asking people for recommendations of games made by YouTubers for people to play, and I don't think anybody recommended me this game, I just remembered it existed. I could dive into this game a little more, but as a game that PewDiePie only just produced, and is not even in, it hardly feels like this is his game. And at this point I feel like I got all my points across, so I would rather spend my time focusing on the video game that got banned, PewDiePie.
Behold! For too long you have been farting in the darkness. Now, you are entering a new era where you shall craft thy own poop.
So from that trailer, you may be able to guess why I got banned, but here's the full story. This game was revealed in early 2018 and finally released in late 2019. Bulbware was the team behind the game, and keep in mind the team behind this game was only 3 people plus PewDiePie. It was released on Android but not Apple. Apple's official statement on the game was, PewDiePie has crude imagery and sound effects which may disgust users. So they're not wrong. This is a game themed around poop, and has endless amounts of potty humor, but to that I have a couple things to say. This is all clearly very cartoony. While the themes are gross, no one's actually going to be that disgusted by it. This is one of those games that when you first hear about it, you're like, this is weird and gross, why would I ever play it? But after only an hour of gameplay, you're immediately desensitized to it, and that's because it's just not that bad. Also, The Binding of Isaac is on iOS. You know, the game where you play as a naked 5-year-old who sets out to kill his mother and Satan, and oh yeah, there are loads of poop in the game, but that's not even the grossest part of Isaac. There's many gross features to it. So whatever, Apple clearly has some double standards going on, but eventually they came around and allowed it in their app store. It's even now on the Nintendo Switch eShop, though it's just a port. I ended up playing the previously banned iOS version, so my review will only be of that version specifically. This game is a dungeon crawler where you play as PewDiePie, aka PewDiePie. The intro of the game, which is voiced by Felix, explains that the little worm, PewDiePie, Poopty, could not stop farting, so people made fun of him, which upset him. But then suddenly the mighty duck came in to give Poopty inspiration, and explained how the evil Samron is casting dark spells from his butt throne. Samron is the main antagonist of the game. After that, the game starts and you awaken a pool of Poopty's tears. You then collect the poop scroll that makes it so Poopty can summon poops to do his bidding. You summon these poops by gathering resources and then literally pooping them out. Can somebody make a poop counter to count how many times I've said poop? Poopty himself can't do much. The poops break obstacles and attack for him, similar to Pikmin. Later on in the game, Poopty can use scrolls to heal them, power them up, freeze and attack enemies. But at the start, he's just the one who poops them out and picks up the resources. The poops of course gradually take damage, and once they die, you'll have to replace them. Quickly in the game, you'll enter Poop Town, which is the main hub. Here is where you'll upgrade everything, but you can do most things in the menu from any place anyway, so this hub isn't as important as you may think. Also, Felix's wife Marcia is in the town as this worm. Jacksepticeye is in this game as a statue called Jacksepticbutt. Jorgen 1 and 2 are also statues, which are pretty cool. The first main mission of the game is saving Felix's dog, Edgar. Once you do, he sits in the hub and gives you some coins for certain resources. Those are the only obvious PewDiePie or Jacksepticeye references I could find in this game. But fun fact, there's also a Binding of Isaac reference in there. So anyway, I think this game is kind of bad. First of all, I'm very confused on the pacing of this game. There's so many obstacles in your way that you'll often just be sitting there watching your poops break them. Like there's not much else to do while waiting. Meanwhile, the combat requires a lot of attention, and enemies or even environmental hazards can attack at a moment's notice. So it's hard to multitask while playing this game, but it oftentimes is too slow paced to be fully immersed. Most quests in this game are some kind of fetch quest. You often talk to somebody, retrieve an item, and that's the quest. There's also a lot of back and forth and a lot of backtracking. Not to mention you have to grind carrots pretty regularly to keep producing more poops. Meanwhile, Poopty walks so freaking slow. I know there's upgrades for him to walk faster, but I'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, he's slow and the poops are even slower. The environment doesn't help this either, with constant bodies of water that slow you down, and certain paths that require you to just sit there and wait for your poops to break your way forward. So basically, the movement on its own is very slow and boring, and the game feels like it goes out of its way to make it even worse. Meanwhile, the lore is mostly poop related or full of literal potty humor, so there's really not much to look forward to there. The dialogue and the missions can be funny on occasion, but honestly, none of it's too elaborate at all, and the charm of the game wore off very quickly for me. The highlights of the game are the combat. Most of the time. Okay, so the combat itself is very straightforward. You tap enemies and your poops attack. You also have the scrolls to use however you want. I enjoy it for the most part, and oftentimes it works well. But honestly, the bosses are not fun at all to me. They're all so chaotic. It's hard to ever produce more poops, and they die so quickly. It feels like a constant cycle of just attempting to do quite literally anything. But I was able to find a way to cheese the bosses. I'm not sure if this is an intended feature or a bug, but this is what I did. Early on in the game, I paid to have no ads show up. So whenever a situation in game appeared where I would typically watch an ad, I would just skip it. For example, when you die, you can watch an ad to spin the wheel for a second chance. But for some reason, I was able to do that endlessly. So I never really got to game over. And when I ran out of poops and resources to make more poops, I was able to get just enough carrots to make one more poop. I'm not sure how much of this is how the game is designed or if this is just a bug. But anyway, after dying a lot to one boss, I ran out of poops and resources, so I had to fight the boss with just one poop, which was way easier. I ended up finding myself dying much less often this way, and I was able to keep the one poop alive for almost the entire fight. It was so difficult to keep multiple poops alive while making more, so I felt like this was just the best strategy, which wasn't a fun one. After I beat the first chapter, I started to watch some reviews on the game to see what other people thought, and to see if I was doing things right. Overall, I heard a variety of opinions, so as far as I can tell, the reception to this game was mixed. But one thing that almost everybody said was that making sure you have enough resources to keep up with your poops was very difficult early game, but apparently everyone was able to manage it by the end of the chapter. And hearing that makes me question if we're even playing the same game. Can somebody tell me if I've been spending my coins wrong and just have underpowered poops or something? Because no matter what happens, I constantly run out of poops. It was then I realized, oh, I'm not backtracking and grinding, silly me. So I did that a lot, which obviously wasn't very fun. I got a decent stockpile of resources, but even then I kept running out of poops. So again, to these reviewers, are we playing the same game? What did you do differently? Am I doing something wrong? Am I just bad at the game? Are you spending real money to get in-game coins and gems? Because if so, that would explain a lot. Felix says this game was made in a way where you don't need to spend money to have a good time and beat the game. And while that's technically true, you are at a huge disadvantage if you don't spend any money. You are going to have to grind and backtrack pretty regularly to keep up. And if you don't do that, while upgrading, you're going to have to choose between making the movement speed bearable, the combat bearable, or if you want to get a bunch of poops without grinding. Not to mention, this game makes you spend a lot of coins on getting these green gems, yet they are required to upgrade almost everything. I know I've complained a lot, but don't get me wrong, this game can be fun on occasion. Not every quest or area suffers from these problems. There's some nice and small combat focused levels that I enjoyed, plus there's plenty of secrets to explore which surprised me in a good way. I really wanted to beat this game for the video, but I couldn't. I beat chapter 1 in 4 hours and had a pretty poor view of the game. It didn't help me that the game crashed 4 or 5 different times throughout my gameplay, which basically means this game crashes 1 time for every hour. Not to mention periodically I would get this broken pop-up for me to buy something, but I wasn't actually able to purchase anything if I wanted to. This pop-up would simply softlock me, and this definitely happens more than once per hour. Anyway, after chapter 1, I realized there was only 3 chapters in total, so I tried to stick it out, but I only made it another hour and a half in. The mission that broke me was the mission where you have to retrieve the missing axe head. It requires you travel a large area pressing buttons that opens a random path in the area. So in other words, I was very slowly traveling up and down, left and right while fighting annoying enemies. It took a long time, I kept getting confused on where I was going, and like I mentioned earlier, the movement in this game is painfully slow. So needless to say, I stopped playing the game during that level. Overall, there were some fun moments in the game, and if I found myself ever trapped with just my phone for entertainment, then yeah, I'd probably play this for a bit and have a decent time for a bit, but I can't imagine myself playing this in any other context. But I won't leave you hanging. I'll show off the ending to the game, or I'll show you off the ending to chapter 2, because I don't think chapter 3 has even been released yet, and I don't think there's even any information if chapter 3 is coming anytime soon. So anyway, as it stands, I was not very far off from beating the game. So for context, the goal of the game is to collect 3 keys so you can open the tower so you can fight the main bad guy, Samron. You collect the first key at the end of chapter 1, and the second key at the end of chapter 2 after you defeat Cyclops. Here's the last cutscene currently in the game.
Suddenly, Cyclops started crying.
Sorry I tried to hit you. When I'm sad, I start hurting others for whatever excuse. You see, I once was a father to a wonderful child. His name was Sam. He was a really gifted baby, and used his magic for good. But 92 years ago, a thief came in the night and kidnapped my son. The abductor used Sam's powers to craft an evil spell. Everyone forgot how to poop, and the ground slowly filled with hate. However, he left something behind. Please take this key, punish the thief, and dry a blind Cyclops' tears.
Poopty took the gift and journeyed to Wizard's Tower. But when the key turned in the lock, a southern wind brought an ominous howl. Death is upon us, Poop Duck whispered.
There's also 2 game modes to play. They're basically just unique side quests, they're really more of the same. I have now reviewed every single game made by PewDiePie, so let's make a quick tier list. I'm excluding Ass from this list because it hardly feels like a PewDiePie game. Number 1 is Tuber Simulator, number 2 is Legend of the Brofist, number 3 is Poopty, and number 4 is PewDiePie's Pixelings. Feel free to check out my other reviews as the PewDiePie saga is finally complete. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic Tuesday.